Well, we can speak now to the Deputy Secretary-General of the National Education Union, Niamh Sweeney. Thank you so much for being on the programme. Do you feel like a teacher strike is inevitable?
I think it's more likely than it's been in my 20 years of working in the profession. Even before the pandemic, teachers were working more unpaid overtime than any other profession. And when early career teachers calculate their hourly pay, they're often being paid under the living wage. As a graduate profession, the pay simply hasn't kept up with other graduate professions. And teachers are saying to us that they are finding it difficult to get to the end of the month. Their heating bills and their fuel bills mean that they are struggling to survive.
Yeah, I mean, look. Don't think anyone would say that times are easy, particularly, of course, for people who've had years of pay restraint. I'm just interested to know exactly what you're calling for. So you say you want an inflation plus pay rise. Inflation, of course, is currently at 9.1%. What is the pay rise that you want to see?
Well, at the moment, we think that the STRB is likely to recommend to the Secretary of State about a 3% pay increase. Now, with CPI or RPI, that means an actual pay cut for our members of between 6 and 8%. And of austerity and pay restraint and last year's pay freeze. So the average teacher will have lost between 17 and 20% in real terms of their wages. So if they don't offer something that is more than at least CPI inflation, the majority of teachers will be facing another year of a pay cut.
So let's just be really, really clear then on what you're calling for. Inflation is currently at 9.1%. So just spell it out for us. What is it that you want to see?
We've said to Niamh Sweeney today that he needs to very seriously consider an above-inflation pay rise for teachers across the board, and it needs to be fully funded. So we need to make sure that schools are able to pay this, because what we're seeing is a teacher recruitment and retention crisis. 1 in 4 teachers leaves the profession within 2 years, and 1 in 3 teachers leaves within 5. And that means that children and young people are less likely.
You want to see a pay rise of over 9.1%, that's correct, is it?
We have to make sure that teachers aren't having another year of a pay cut. And that's what they've been suffering for the last 10 years, plus the pay freeze that was issued last year to all of the public sector.
What exactly are you calling for?
So we have said that we're calling for an above inflation pay fully funded pay rise for all teachers and all education workers. We mustn't forget that support staff wages have not kept up with those of retail or hospitality, and support staff members in our schools work with some of our most vulnerable children and those with special educational need and disability. If the government doesn't address teacher pay, then it is going to face an even bigger workforce crisis than it is in at the moment. And what we are seeing is children in secondary school having 3 or 4 maths teachers within a year. I've got a friend who's a physics teacher who started after Easter, and then every time he comes to the end of a lesson, the children say to him, "Sir, are you coming back next week?" Children need a qualified, experienced teacher who is committed to the profession, that isn't worried about whether they can pay their mortgage, that isn't worried about whether they can fill their car with petrol at the end of the month, and isn't facing £2,000 hike in their own childcare fees. We're a profession of 76% women who have suffered through austerity and have suffered through the pandemic. There's a pay gap and a pension gap, and children and families and schools deserve better.
OK, so pretty clear then that you're going to be balancing for action. You want to see an above-inflation pay rise. So reading between the lines of what you said, that's effectively double figures, above 9.1%. So my other question is, children have lost so much education time already because of the pandemic. And we know that it's the most deprived children who've suffered because of that. According to the Sutton Trust, social mobility fell by 12% thanks to the lost learning during the pandemic. How comfortable are you that if teachers do go on strike, that's going to be more lost hours for children in the classroom and more disruption, particularly, for those underprivileged children?
Teachers are acutely aware of the impact that them taking strike action would have on children. That's why they would never take it lightly. And that's why, it's taken this crisis for them to be considering it. But I've spoken to more teachers this week who have said that they would, for the first time in their career, consider taking strike action, because they recognise that it's not just about the pay in their pockets, it's about recruiting graduate teachers into the profession and keeping teachers in the profession so that children have a well-qualified, experienced teacher teaching them. We've seen, you're right, the children who are most deprived, it's often the fact that they are coming from families that the educational disadvantage is already in place before they reach school. So if the government is really true to its word about levelling up, it will invest in early years education and invest in fully funded pay increase that keeps teachers in the classroom.
OK. I've spoken to Mick Lynch of the RMT at the weekend, who said that they're effectively prepared to keep striking until they get what they are asking for when it comes to pay. I just wonder if that's the same for teachers. How long could the strikes last for?
Well, we haven't had a pay offer from the employer yet, so we are hoping that the Department of Education, that Niamh Sweeney would read our letter today, will hear the news stories and all the interviews of teachers that I've heard on the news and radio.
The question is how long. The question is, sorry to try and get back to the question, but the question is how long could the strikes last for?
Well, we haven't even balloted yet, Sophie, so that's why we're putting this warning out. This is the strength of the feeling and the crisis of the cost of living that we are in right now. We have said that we are committed from our conference in Easter to run an indicative ballot in the autumn term, and we will be recommending to our members that they vote yes for strike action. That's a warning.
I understand that we're early in the process, but I know that parents will be. I know that parents will be really concerned about the idea of staff going on strike, even though, of course, many, I guess, would understand the desire for better pay. Are we talking days? Are we talking weeks? Are we talking months? Or do we just not know?
That will be down to our members and what they decide they are willing and prepared to do. But I tell you what parents are also concerned about. Parents are concerned that teacher vacancies are up by 14%. Parents are concerned that their children their class sizes are rising because classes are having to be merged because teacher vacancies aren't being filled. And parents are concerned that their children are being taught by non-subject specialists. We're finding it more difficult to recruit IT teachers that need to develop curriculum that's vital for our economy and vital for young people entering into the workforce and the next phases of their educational career. That's what parents are extremely worried about. And Niamh Sweeney needs to hear that call and needs to ensure that teacher pay maintains its balance with other graduate professions, and that we are getting the right number of teachers to come into the profession and keeping teachers once they get there.